Stay in there until you're ready to admit what you did." My mom screamed through the windshield while I slammed my hands against the burning hot glass. The air inside the car felt impossible to breathe. I was 15, locked in the back seat of my mom's SUV outside a grocery store parking lot while the summer heat made everything blur. People were staring, but nobody stopped. And the worst part, I hadn't even done anything. My little brother Ethan stood beside my mom, pretending to cry after telling her I stole money from her emergency envelope. He knew she'd believe him. She always did. Even when I begged her to check the truth, she took my phone, locked the doors, and told me maybe 20 minutes alone would fix my attitude. Then, a black SUV pulled up across the lane. A man stepped out, looked directly at me trapped inside the car, and suddenly went pale. My mom saw him too. And for the first time all day, she looked terrified. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. I remember pressing my forehead against the window, trying to see him clearly through the glare. He looked maybe late 40s, dressed in a dark button-down shirt like he'd just come from work. Not some random guy wandering through a parking lot. The second his eyes locked onto mine, he stopped walking completely. Then he looked at my mom. "What the hell are you doing?" I could barely hear him through the glass, but I saw the anger in his face instantly. My mom crossed her arms like she was already preparing to defend herself. "This is my daughter. Mind your business. She's overheating. She's being punished." The man looked back at me again, and something about his expression changed. Not just concern. Recognition. That made my stomach twist harder than the heat. Inside the SUV, the seats were so hot they burned my legs through my jeans. My throat felt dry enough to crack. I banged weakly against the window again. "Mom," I mouthed. She ignored me. Ethan stayed close behind her shoulder, avoiding my eyes completely now. 20 minutes earlier, he'd stood in our kitchen, swearing I stole $200 from the envelope our mom hid above the refrigerator. He even added details that sounded believable, said he saw me take it before school, said I threatened him when he asked about it. And my mom bought every word instantly. No questions, no proof, just straight to punishment. That wasn't new. Ethan had blamed me for broken headphones last winter, missing jewelry before that. Somehow I was always guilty first, innocent later, if she even cared enough to find out the truth. The man suddenly pulled out his phone. My mom stepped toward him fast. "Don't call anybody. This is a family matter. You locked a minor in a hot car," he snapped. "No, it's not." That was the moment Ethan panicked. "Mom," he whispered sharply, tugging her sleeve, "we should just go." My mom turned on him immediately. "Be quiet." But Ethan wasn't looking at her anymore. He was staring at the man like he knew exactly who he was. And then, somewhere in the distance, I heard sirens getting closer. By the time the first police cruiser turned into the parking lot, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely push myself upright in the back seat. The man stayed planted beside my mom's SUV, arms crossed, watching her carefully like he didn't trust a single thing she might do next. My mom kept glancing between him and the approaching officers, and the confidence she'd had 10 minutes ago was gone. One officer stepped out quickly. "Unlock the vehicle, ma'am." "It's not what it looks like," my mom said immediately. I almost laughed at that. The officer opened the back door, and hot air rushed out so fast it made me dizzy. He helped me onto the pavement while another officer started questioning my mom near the front of the SUV. "You okay?" the first officer asked. I nodded even though I wasn't. Across the lot, Ethan stood frozen beside the shopping cart return, arms wrapped around himself. He wouldn't look at me now. Funny, because earlier that morning he couldn't stop talking. I literally saw her take it he'd told my mom in the kitchen while she searched through drawers looking for the missing cash. She hid something in her backpack before school. I didn't touch your money, I kept saying, but my mom had already decided. She tore through my room while Ethan stood in the doorway pretending to be nervous. When she didn't find anything, that somehow made her angrier. You probably already spent it, she said. Then she took my phone, canceled the summer art program I'd spent months applying for, and when I tried pointing out that Ethan had lied before, she cut me off immediately. Your brother wouldn't make something like this up. Now, standing in that parking lot, I noticed something that made my chest tighten. One of the officers had walked over to the man from the black SUV. And the second they spoke, the officer's posture changed completely. Respectful. Familiar. Then the officer looked toward my mom and asked, "Ma'am, why didn't you mention there's already an active report connected to your son?" My mom's face went completely white. What report? My mom asked instantly, her voice cracking. Nobody answered her fast enough. The second the words left the officer's mouth, Ethan ran. He took off across the parking lot so suddenly that a woman pushing groceries actually screamed as he nearly slammed into her cart. One of the officers shouted at him to stop, then sprinted after him between rows of parked cars. My stomach dropped. Ethan never ran from anything unless he was caught. People all around us had started pulling out their phones now. I could see cameras pointed toward the ambulance that had just arrived, toward my mom crying beside the SUV, toward me sitting on the curb with a cooling pack pressed against my neck. Everything felt public all of a sudden. Humiliating. The officer who'd helped me out of the car crouched beside me. You feeling nauseous? Dizzy? A little. Try to stay awake for me. Across the lot, the other officer finally brought Ethan back by the arm. He wasn't fighting anymore. He looked terrified. That's when another officer walked up holding a small notepad. We received reports earlier this week from a convenience store on Maple Avenue, he said. Security footage showed your son stealing prepaid gift cards. My mom blinked at him like she didn't understand the words. What? They attempted to contact you multiple times. I don't answer unknown numbers. The officer gave her a look that said that wasn't helping. Ethan started crying for real now. I was going to put the money back. I stared at him in disbelief. The missing cash. The sudden accusations. His panic. He'd blamed me because he needed someone else to take the fall before our mom found out what he'd already done. My mom turned toward him slowly. Ethan, tell me you didn't. He was scared. She suddenly corrected herself, almost desperately, looking toward the officers. He's just scared. The man from the black SUV finally spoke again, his voice colder than before. Scared kids lie, he said. They don't stand there while their sister nearly passes out in a locked car. Silence hit hard after that. Then he looked directly at my mom. Denise, he said quietly, tell her why you really don't want me here. My mom's eyes filled instantly with tears. And for the first time in my life, I saw her look afraid of the truth coming out. Tell me what? I asked, pushing the cooling pack away. Nobody answered. The amp beside me kept checking my pulse, but all I could focus on was my mom standing near the SUV with tears running down her face while Ethan stared at the ground like he wanted to disappear. Mom, I said again, louder this time. Who is he? She shook her head immediately. Not here. That only made everything worse. Ethan suddenly looked up. Mom, just tell her. Stop talking, she snapped. But he was already unraveling. I didn't think it would get this bad, he blurted out, voice shaking. I just needed her to get blamed for once before you found out about the cards. I stared at him. For once, the words slipped out before he could stop them. His face changed instantly. The man from the black SUV stepped closer then, calm but firm. My name is Marcus Hale. The name hit something buried deep in my memory. Marcus Hale. I'd seen it before, old cardboard boxes in our attic, faded paperwork my mom once snatched away from me when I was little. Why do I know that name? I asked. My mom covered her face with one hand. Brianna, Marcus looked directly at me because I knew your father. Everything around me seemed to go quiet. My father had supposedly walked out when I was 6. That was the story my mom told my entire life. He left. He stopped caring. End of discussion. But Marcus didn't sound like someone talking about a deadbeat. One of the officers interrupted quietly beside us. Ma'am, because of the circumstances today, Child Protective Services will likely be contacted. My mom started crying harder. Cars continued slowing near the parking lot entrance. More people filming, more whispering. Public, permanent. Then Ethan broke completely. I stole the money, he admitted, sobbing now. I bought gaming stuff online, and I thought if she got blamed first, you'd never check. I felt sick hearing him say it out loud, not because he lied, because he knew our mom would believe him without hesitation. Marcus looked at my mom one last time. You can still tell her yourself. My mom shook her head weakly, so Marcus turned toward me instead and said the one thing I never expected to hear. Brianna, your father never abandoned you. My mom collapsed against the side of the SUV, covering her mouth as I froze in complete shock for a second. I honestly thought I'd misheard him. The parking lot noise faded into this dull blur in the background while I stared at Marcus trying to process what he'd just said. What do you mean he didn't abandon me? My voice barely sounded like mine. Marcus glanced at my mom before answering. Your father spent years trying to stay in your life. My mom immediately shook her head through tears. Don't do this here. You lost the right to control the story today, Marcus said quietly. That hit hard because even the officers nearby stopped talking after that. Marcus crouched slightly so he was eye level with me. Your father filed for shared custody after the divorce. Multiple times. He kept trying to contact you. I felt like the ground underneath me had disappeared. No, I whispered automatically. My mom said he left. Marcus's expression tightened. That's not what happened. My mom finally broke. He was going to take you away from me. She cried. You don't understand what things were like back then. But he didn't leave me, I said. The way she looked at me told me everything before she even answered. No. That single word hurt more than the heat, more than the humiliation, more than Ethan's lie. Because suddenly years of things started making sense all at once. Why my mom got angry anytime I asked questions about my dad. Why every photo of him disappeared. Why she always acted like I was somehow difficult while Ethan could do no wrong. Marcus exhaled slowly. Your father warned the court that Brianna was becoming isolated in the home. He believed you were favoring Ethan. My mom covered her face completely after that. And the worst part, nobody argued with him. Not even Ethan. I looked at my brother. You knew she'd believe you over me. He started crying again. I didn't think she'd actually lock you in the car. But you knew she'd blame me. He couldn't answer. That silence was answer enough. I turned back toward my mom, feeling this pressure in my chest I couldn't even describe. You locked me in that car because believing me would have meant admitting you were wrong. My mom physically dropped to her knees beside the SUV, right there in front of the officers, the EMTs, the strangers recording everything. Brianna, please, but there wasn't anything left for her to say. Over the next hour, everything unraveled completely. Police documented the entire incident. Because of the temperature inside the vehicle and my condition when they arrived, they informed my mom there would be a formal child endangerment investigation. Child Protective Services was contacted before we even left the parking lot. Ethan admitted to stealing the gift cards and the missing cash. Since he was 13, officers referred him into juvenile counseling programs instead of arresting him. But the reports still went on record, and the videos from that parking lot spread fast. By the next day, relatives I hadn't heard from in years were calling after seeing clips online. Some apologized for never noticing how differently I'd been treated. Others asked questions my mom clearly didn't want to answer anymore. Marcus stayed with me through all of it. Before leaving that day, he handed me a sealed envelope from his car. "Your father wrote this years ago," he said. "I kept hoping someday I'd be able to give it to you." My hands shook opening it later that night. The first line nearly destroyed me. "Brianna, if you're reading this, it means I finally found a way back to you." A few weeks later, I met my father for the first time in nearly 10 years at a quiet diner outside town. I was terrified walking in, but the second he stood up from the booth and looked at me, I recognized the same expression Marcus had in the parking lot. Recognition, like he'd been searching for me the entire time. He hugged me carefully, like he was afraid I'd disappear again. Then he looked me in the eyes and said softly, "I never stopped looking for you." And for the first time in years, I believed someone chose me first.